The Bible is just about as wrong as it is possible for any document to be. For fuck's sake!
They want to go ahead and they want to take this idea and talk about that as if it's real, as if that's what's real.
This is insane. Look at this vastness.
Hello and welcome to the Line Go Show. It is the 8th of June, 2013, and today's topic is religion's influence on society. And today we have, as guests, we have Dazzletag.
Hello.
And also Dazzletag, your thing's a little bit off.
My thing?
Is that supposed to say Dazzletag?
Yeah, is it reversed?
No, it's a little bit too far to the left.
I
just see Izzle Tag. Yeah, that's better.
I just see Darren Taggart.
Hello,
No,
that's me.
on his webcam, you see it?
Oh.
Yeah, and we have Pink Unicorn, Hogtie Champ, and for some reason his mic is...
We just got connected.
Yeah, we got Donald, we got Angry Pumpkin from Ireland, we got Realistic Nihilist and Sam.
Yellow.
So,
Hello.
So, Realistic Nihilist, you wanted to say something, I think, about this topic.
Oh, I just think it's funny, because the topic is religious influence on society, and I just happened to find something that is actually beneficial because of religious stupid influence against homosexuals. I'm actually going to go and stay for $900 at some resort that endorses gays and lesbians. And no one wants to go to it because there are gays and lesbians there, so it's super fucking cheap, so...
Wait, what?
Bigotry benefits me.
I'm confused. What? I mean, what?
There's a resort in Hawaii that says that they support gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgenders. No one wants to go to this fucking resort because they're all bigots, so it's really cheap to go there.
I didn't think it'd be that cheap, even if it's in Hawaii.
What the Alright. So that's about that. I just thought that was an interesting point.
Hooray for cheap hotels.
Yeah.
Alright, so what should we begin with? I suppose there are... It's not fair to say that there are only negative influences, as I think a lot of people who are kind of bigoted against religious folk tend to do. I myself am an atheist, but I see religions as a collection of people rather than this monolithic ideal, and I think that that's when you get into trouble, is when you see it as a monolith. But I think that overall, when you have any sort of organized entity that purports to have the absolute truth, that's when you get a lot of negative effects.
I think it's perfectly correct to view religion as a set of ideas, and can therefore be criticised without any hint of bigotry. I think if you get confused between the belief and the believer, then it can start getting a bit sort of distasteful. But the ideas underpinning it are almost entirely sort of fact-free. And I think if you think truth is a good thing, then you should criticize it.
Well, I didn't mean to say... What I meant to say is that I don't like the idea that people monolithically criticize religion in the sense that they confuse. This happens a lot with Islam nowadays, which is that people confuse the believer with the belief. And I think if you look at, I think the perfect example of someone who walks that tightrope just completely perfectly, especially with such a charged area of criticism, is Klingshore. If you see him on YouTube, is he does a great job of being someone that criticizes Islam, but at the same time is very, very even-handed when it comes to political issues. And I think that I agree that we have to criticize. For people interested in truth, we should criticize the ideas rather than the people, or make sure that you're being very clear about it.
Yeah, I think the separation, it's very handy with Muslims because you have the separation in language between Islam and Muslims. So you can criticize Muslims. Criticize Islam, but it makes slightly less sense to criticize Muslims because there's a big spread just as there are of Christians. It's absolutely correct to criticize any individual or any person who's seeking to, conscript the mass of their religion to say, oh, well, there's so many billions of Muslims in the world, therefore you ought to listen to me and my particular interpretation of it. But yeah, I think that's...
Although it might do us a favor to sort of recognize that there's a bit of a gray area in there. And certainly I agree with the principle that it's really the faiths that are at issue, and let's say even not even so much the faiths, but the mechanisms and the strategies that they use to determine what's true and what's not is kind of the thing that binds all religions. They all kind of have a faulty truth detection mechanism, and I think that's the main thing that gets criticized. In turn, you can look at a specific claim of any individual religion and say, well, that's an errant claim. So, for example, I don't think Joseph Smith was really looking at gold plates inside a hat. That, to me, is not credible, and you can kind of address a specific claim. But when it comes to criticizing the people, I think where we slip into a gray area is that sometimes the religious influence kind of makes the people themselves deficient and even outright dangerous. And I think that's where we kind of get into a bit of a weird area, is when we go to say, well, this guy's a jerk, or this guy causes some problems, or these group of people. Like, for example, how do we speak of the Westboro Baptist Church? We can say we don't agree with their beliefs, but as people, are these people you'd want to have over for dinner?
No, they're insane.
No, they wouldn't.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'd have to get me so drunk for me to even consider it.
No. You're thinking about it wrong. You don't want to be drunk, because if you're drunk, you'll be like okay with it.
That's
and
what
like,
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
No, but you'll be like okay with it in concept, but then when you see them, you start screaming at them, because that's what alcohol does. Maybe if
I
you
imagine
were,
if you gave alcohol... Sorry.
I would say if I would take LSD.
Do you think?
Because that way I wouldn't even think that I'd be with the Westboro Baptist Church.
Do you think if you gave...
But you take my point, though, that it's kind of a flowery thing to say that we're not going to criticize people. And yet if I mention the Phelps family, all of a sudden, wow, they're a bunch of assholes, right? So we got to, it's a bit of a gray area, and I think it just requires a bit of discipline to navigate through.
Well,
I think you can criticize people. Some people really need to be criticized. There are certainly some assholes that say horrible things, and they should be called on it. But to make hate against the group, to make hate against the whole group of people, say all Muslims are evil or all Christians are evil, I think that's the wrong approach.
Oh, yeah. I think it's the broad brush that's the dangerous and pointless effort.
But, I mean, all right. I just think we are addressing people based on their individual merits, and we just know the merits that Westboro Baptist Church holds to. So you can point... you can use a broad brush over the Westboro Baptist Church because you know all of their adherents. And you could say the same for religion if all of their adherents pontificated the same way. The fact is that they don't. So that's the only problem. But that is still addressing people on their individual merits, because all of the people who are in the Westboro Baptist Church hold those merits by necessity.
And if I may, I would say that we're not... It would be bad to just say all Christians are assholes, because a lot of them are generally nice people, but there are some extremist Christians, some really fucking nutty bastards out there, like the Westboro Baptist Church. And we should call out those people specifically, because they can lead to a detrimental trend of gay bashing and hatred.
If I may.
Go ahead, Donald. Why do you say Donnie? Okay, go ahead.
Just say Donnie.
Okay.
I just put the legalness on Skype. That way it's when you fill it out. But anyways, coming from a Christian's perspective, when it comes to the people such as Westboro Baptist Church, they need to be based on individuality, even in a religious aspect, because my upbringing, I was taught to love everybody, religiously, to love everybody, no matter what their life path was. So, and I was also taught the positives that are in the Bible. I was never dwelled on the negatives in the Bible. I know it exists, and I don't dismiss it, and I don't deny it. It doesn't exist in the Bible. But to say that all Christians are just like the Westboro Baptist Church freaks, it blows my mind, because the one thing I did hear everybody say is that you should take the person on that individual's merit, not on what they necessarily believe in, because I've read the Bible, but I've never read it from front to back. I've read the important parts. I've read the Bible's negatives, but after starting reading the positives, like love thy neighbor, do unto others as they would do unto you, that contradicts the whole hate fag signs that stupid ass Westboro Baptist Church signs that they post up there. I forget what his name is, but the guy that did the 2 documentaries about the Westboro Baptist Church,
Louis Theroux.
Yeah, Theroux. Thank you. He went. There was like a 6 or 7 year time difference between the documentaries, and even when I saw the very first one, they literally made me sick at my stomach as a Christian, because nobody I know, and like I was discussing, I think it was Hog Tie Champ, I've traveled this country, at least the United States. I've never been outside of the United States, unfortunately, but at least in the United States, I've traveled. When I say travel, I've thumbed it across the United States. I've walked from Reno, Nevada to Washington, Ohio. And I've come across thousands, tens of thousands of people. And every Christian that I've ever come across has the same mindset as me. To respectfully say that all Christians who believe the Bible and believe in a God has the same mentality as the idiots like the Westboro Baptist Church, like the Jim Joneses of religion, like the David Koreshes of society, is wrong. Because unless you know the individual, you can't really state that all Christians are the same, just because of what it says in the Bible. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of Christians like myself that are out there, and to be lumped in with the whole mindset, I know no Christian that agrees with slavery. I know no Christian who hates homosexuals. Go ahead.
But that's not because of the Bible, and it's not because of religion. It's because of the progression of society.
Exactly, and that's why I said to judge a Christian, or Christians, I should say, because of what it says in the Bible, which is a lot of the time the case. We get lumped into one group, or one. We get. And this was a discussion I had on here once before. Yeah, I know I should name myself something else, or I'm like inches away from being an atheist. But there's a lot of things that I adhere and I like about Christianity that I don't like about being a secularist or a humanist, because as humans get progress in life, the humanistic side of man is appalling. I mean, we want to kill one another over freaking land, or over oil, over money. So why the hell would I want to listen to those kind of people? And I don't.
Well,
Just like in Christianity, when there's negative things that are spoken in the Bible, that's why I don't listen to that part of the Bible. Go ahead.
Are you saying that it's perfectly reasonable not to judge? Because the problem is that a lot of people describe themselves and self-identify and self-label as Christians, and then they say when you do bad things, that's not because they're Christians. That's because they're sinful.
That's because they're insane.
Because they're insane. But when they do good things, it's because they're Christians.
No, I don't.
Christianity,
okay.
Sorry. So their Christianity is independent of their behavior. Is that?
I get what you're saying. No. Just like I think I was talking to Hogtie the other day. It's the stigma that you hear these, like this idiot woman that decided to drown her kids in a car and say that God told her to. It's a bunch of crap. She had a few nuts loose in her brain that caused her to do it. It has nothing to do with religion. Huh?
Abraham, didn't he hear God to kill his son?
You're gonna bring up things that are in the Bible. I'm not a literalist. I don't look at the Bible as a literal.
No. But you can imagine.
Do I think that was insane? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do question that. I'm not gonna stick my daughter on a tablet and try to sacrifice her.
Absolutely. I would applaud your not doing.
No,
it.
The
point is that you can find justifications for charity in the Bible, and you can find.
Oh, absolutely. But see, the one thing I do now. With that being said, though, I still see. I'm all over the board. I'll give you guys a little quick rundown. I'll talk about one thing. It's not a contradiction when I make this next statement. I do believe that the Christian society, at least in the United States, I can't speak for other countries or other sects of Christianity, but on the whole, Christianity does do good in our society. They help with the homeless. They help, and I know because I was 7 years homeless. There are Christian groups that do it solely because it's the right thing to do, not because they're gonna. Yeah, it's not solely because they're wanting to get new people in their flock. They're just doing it because people need help. There are tons of Christians.
I would say
Christian.
In my
because they're Christian.
One at a time.
Not they're Christian.
What would you say, realistic?
I said it's irrelevant whether or not they're Christian.
Right, and it shouldn't be. But the point is that everybody wants to what is it called? I think Darren said
hello.
Labeling.
Labeling.
Everybody wants to label themselves instead of just saying, like I'm a Christian, so we're all the same, or you guys are atheists, so your atheists are all the same. It should be based on the person's merit. And if they are a Christian, don't dismiss it because you dislike the religious belief. If a church is helping a society with the homeless, the church is helping the society with homelessness. You're don't dismiss it because they're just trying to get new followers or trying to give them some more feeding of religion. It doesn't do that.
Well, to
be one at a time. Sam, you go first this time.
Well, to be fair, there are a lot of the same people who are doing aid work in Africa are also saying that they shouldn't have sex with use condoms, or that they should make sure that they become Catholics. So just to play devil's advocate, that does happen a lot of the time, and by no means is it the majority. But the issue that I see is not necessarily, I think that if you're a bigot, you're going to be a bigot. And I hate it when people say, oh, well, this guy's hates homosexuals because he's a Christian. No, he hates homosexuals and he uses the Bible as justification. And that's where I take the issue, is the fact that as a societal force, it should, if it's personal, that's great, but too many people want it to not be personal, where if we're having a silly discussion like whether gay people should be allowed to get married, it's not about it's not about homosexuality or about equal rights. It's made about how much you hate gay people and how you can justify it and make it sacred to be against. And that's the issue. The issue is that it's that people use the idea to affect other people. And I think that's exactly when it starts to be a problem.
I think we should all be. I think there's a lot of Christian secularists, and I think that's fine. It's where they want to not be Christian secularists, where they want to create their, they want everybody else to behave because they believe in a certain thing, change their behavior because of their belief, which is the thing that I think most atheists are and most secular Christians are against.
Just so you guys know, the guy in the chatting box, his name is Soldier Boy. That's my actual biological brother. And he's a perfect example of what I mean, that positive things that's happened in people's life where religion is involved. When growing up, or as an adult, he absolutely was one of those people that he didn't hate religion, but he also didn't really go towards the religious beliefs. And after he went to Afghanistan and saw so much atrocities, it's made a positive impact on his life. He's not a holy roller. He's not a Bible thumper. He's like me, and I'll tell you, I think it helps him relax his mind knowing that in the end, it's his choice to do it. It's like me. I constantly repeat this. When it comes to religion, it does not affect none of you guys, no offense, none of you guys or anybody else in the world. Just because I've made this known throughout the internet, whoever talks to me, I'm anti-theocratic. I don't believe religion belongs in politics of any kind.
That's great, but you are in the minority in American Christianity.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, I know I'm a minority in the anti-theocratic, but I feel, and I haven't gotten the statistics, so I can't really speak off of that, but at least in my travels, I know that there's a lot of people like me. So, I would only assume, which is the mistake of all people, is making an assumption, but I can only believe that there's a lot more people out there than I think there is. So,
I agree with him in the sense that only the extremes get highlighted, unfortunately. The issue is that there aren't enough people like Donnie. There aren't people who are outspoken about people using their personal beliefs to justify just completely silly bigotries that are not necessarily rooted in the belief, but just rooted in the fact that they were probably going to be bigots anyway. The issue, for instance, I actually had an interesting experience where last summer I lived in England, and part of my program that I was in ended up where it was partially run through Brigham Young University. And for those who are in the UK who don't know, that's a completely Mormon school. It's a religious university. And with the luck of the draw for my apartments, and I'm a pretty liberal guy. I'm an atheist. I drink. I had, in an 11-person unit, 8 roommates that were Mormons. And I was terrified of that idea at first because I was like, oh, they're going to be intolerant. You know what happened? I was completely wrong. Even people that went specifically to this college to be a Mormon were still just normal people. And I think that that's what we have to highlight. There's a great quote that I tend to really live by, which is, and excuse me for the language, but it's by Freddie Roach, who's a great boxing trainer. And he says, I'm not religious, but if being a good person isn't good enough, they can all go fuck themselves.
That is a good point. I mean, the fact is that, we can argue till we're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, there are people out there that I've personally come across in my life. Not that, my experience is trumps any education or anything like that. But the truth is that you can argue the fact that people out in society, or as for society, we sit here and try to make sense of why certain religious groups like Westboro Retard Baptist Church will sit there and make all these wild claims and think they are better. I was actually looking forward to watching that second documentary that about them. And when they told me, or when they said in that documentary that they are looking forward to the time that they can go to Jerusalem, they'll die in Jerusalem. I know they will, because of the fact that they're whack jobs, and they see right through that fake sensationalism that they have, and that's the problem with the media. I'm sorry, I'll finish my thought and then you can start. That's the problem. A lot of people see the fact that they're getting sensationalized, and that's all they need to do for media to jump on that bandwagon to say, well, the freaks have done it again, and broadcast the individuals that are obviously out there. And once we realize, stop sensationalize the minority of people that do that, then we can get past this whole problem and see people as themselves, not as the religious part of them. So that's my 2 cents.
If I could get in, I'd just like to say to Danny, I do try to live by that sentiment of deal with people on an individual level, but there's kind of 7 billion people on the planet, so you can't judge everyone as an individual, because while we are all individuals and we are all shiny and unique and woohoo, plenty of people are freakily similar to each other. I mean,
yeah,
you will find people that do share beliefs, like the Westboro Baptist Church, to keep harping on flogging the dead horse. You know, they're a band of people that seem to fucking hate everyone but themselves. And, you know, they do flock together.
And they're not saying anything that isn't widely felt across America. 40% of all homeless people are gay. Now, they've been kicked out of their house because the impact of religion. The parents saying, no, I'm sorry, we love Jesus a bit more than we love our family. One of the most natural bonds in creation, or in nature, is the love of a parent for its child, and yet they're discarded in the millions. You know, there's 40% of people across the planet are not gay. You know, it's between 6 and 10. So there's this, you know, if you want figures that show that a lot of people think the same way. It's in things like that where religion comes in conflict with humanity, you know, and too many people seem to select religion as opposed to what's actually the right thing to do.
Right. I'm gonna address what you just said about how 40 what do you say, 46?
40% of homeless people are gay.
Right, okay.
In the UK, I should say. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
This is the latest.
And maybe in the UK that's the case, but you know, I was homeless for 7 years, and we're not talking about I just happened to have no home to live in. I was literally eating out dumpsters, sleeping under bridges. I was the true homeless. But the problem is that when you bring up the fact that people who get kicked out of their house because they're homosexual, I don't know about the UK, so this isn't coming from my perspective of that, but you have to admit that homosexuality, the hatred of homosexuality, does not only stay in the Christian world. We have secular people, or people who don't even have faith in God, that hate homosexuals, and it's just as bad as Christians. And no, all I ever hear is that fact.
Well, that's because the Christian demographic is one of the larger ones for the places in which we all live. That's just our go-to answer. If we were in the Middle East, we'd be ragging on the Muslims. If we were living in Asia, we might be talking about some of those religions. It's just because we're here, they're prevalent, and some of them are assholes. That's generally why we go straight to Christianity.
Well, I would say that the first thing is that the root of homosexuality is not religious in the strictest sense. It's more rooted in the fact that we, you know, as a species, we have a normative need to maintain this binary between men and women to some degree, and the degree of validity behind it is debatable. But the issue is that it's not that Christianity causes this specific behavior or that religion causes this specific behavior, but it's able to take these irrational claims that may be rooted in something that is biological or sociological and then make them holy. And that's the issue that I see is it's not the fact that, it's the fact that it's still regarded as a holy thing to be bigoted against homosexuals, and homosexuality in general. That's the issue. You don't see people up in arms about eating shrimp. And that's because being kosher has become, relatively passé in even Jewish society, which I was raised in. So the issue is that religion allows an avenue for something like that to become sacred. And that's very dangerous whenever anything is held sacred.
Just to note, Realistic Knowledge has a point to make.
When we talk about sacred, it's a power struggle. It's a power struggle between the religious and the non-religious. That's all it is. And you don't want to sound like tyrants, but that's what it is, because we try to enforce our ideology. We think our ideology is objectively superior, and it's not. And that's why when we're talking about judging people on their individual merits, there's no reason, because if someone says that they are religious, that is indicative of at least one merit. If you dislike that merit specifically, then you can still judge them that way. So I don't know. I don't like the moral terminology that's being thrown around, because it's a struggle to power. And I think that the honest situation is really to look at how we as atheists and secularists take control of the religious power, because that's what it is. We dislike their power. We dislike their use of their power. But there is nothing objectively wrong about what they do, and nothing objectively wrong about or right about what we want. It's just a power struggle. It's two competing powers.
There's nothing objectively wrong with anything, but I mean where the secularism is the only system where you can have freedom of religion. So everybody should be singing along the secularist line. Do you know what I mean? Nobody is. I don't think there's any atheist that would say, I need to convert all of theists. Do you know what I mean? What you're trying to do is say, we can all get on together, thank you. I don't need to listen to your, I don't need people protesting funerals or standing up in the House of Lords telling everybody how, gay marriage is terrible. Which is what happens, and it happens.
That could be what your religion pontificates. So you are trying to eradicate religion. You could, because anybody can make a religion out of anything, and those could be crucial aspects of a religion. In a sense, they could be. I mean, I'm not saying that they are or are indicative of the current religions, but they could be. So you are trying to say, no, we value getting along more than we value your freedom to express your religion the way you want to. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with what people value, because their values are independent of themselves. But I think the reason we have these discussions, and the most important thing to address, is that we think our perspective is more valuable, and we want to enforce that. So I think the issue is really, how do we enforce our ethical standpoint?
But that's not to suggest, I hope, that all viewpoints are equally valid.
Your mic is really...
Yeah, you're fading in and out.
Sorry, it's very directional, this one.
Just boost your gain on your mic.
Yeah,
there.
Can you hear that better now?
Yeah.
Should be very loud. It's because I moved my head around. I was just saying that it's obviously nobody, I hope, is suggesting that all viewpoints are equally valid. That is not true.
What do you mean? Because I might be suggesting that. It depends.
Oh right. Sorry. Yes. Well, you wouldn't take the babblings of somebody who wanted to do brain surgery on you over what a neurosurgeon says to you about your brain.
It depends. It depends on the person making the evaluations. Obviously.
So you've got a brain tumor. okay, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I can tell you've got a really blue aura. I've got some holy blessed blades here."
No, you're straw manning me. It's not my value because people make values independently. So obviously I go with the brain surgeon, but some people wouldn't. And to say that, I'm not saying that all values are equal in everyone's opinion, but I'm saying that there's no one opinion that is more valid than the other. There are opinions that will produce results and others won't, but that's irrelevant because other opinions could be more valued. So no one values all.
Sorry, so results are irrelevant.
Just some.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just going with this. I mean, because, for example, with science, you would say, that experiment is the arbiter of truth. Do you know what I mean? You come up with the prettiest theory and you say, "Oh, it's very interesting. Is it true?" And then you do it, and then you get results from it, and you get neuroscience and things like that from it. Is that not self-evidently better?
It depends on what you value, because there's no one thing. See, you're taking empiricism and you're saying people should value it because it produces results, but not necessarily insane people don't care about results.
Yeah, and we probably shouldn't value the views of insane people equally to ours, I hope.
Yeah, but see, if I may,
language, what we should and shouldn't do is completely individual in respect. I could make any statement and say, just because I'm a nihilist, I should say everyone kill themselves, but I don't say that because you're just going to die anyway, so what's the point? The end result of life is death, so why don't you just kill yourself? That's the same kind of equivocal language you're using.
Well, I don't think it is. I mean, if you're talking about trying to change people's minds, yeah, which presumably is the point of discussing all this.
Right.
Yeah, then you've got to be convincing. And not many people are convinced by the fact of you're going to die, so kill yourself. So you've got to look at what things are convincing. And I think, scientific evidence is extremely convincing. People saying they see, nowadays people saying, "Oh, I went somewhere private and I saw a burning bush," isn't very convincing. So you wouldn't create a religion like that in that way. Do you see what I'm saying? In terms of what's convincing. I
understand what you're saying.
And then that equals a valuable opinion.
Right. I'm just right. I'm just saying you would have to devise a way to get people to change their value system. And if people already don't value empiricism, then you're not going to go anywhere with that. You're not going to go anywhere with Westboro Baptist Church valuing, with your evaluation of empiricism. And that's the point. The point is to gain power over these people. Maybe convincing is the best method.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems the most successful. If you look at the rise of science and the rise of secularism around the world.
It is and it isn't, which is I deal with this a lot, and you probably don't know because we've never interacted, Darren. But as people who know me know, I currently am employed and I work in a science lab. So, and I'm actually running stuff in the lab from my computer remotely right now. But the thing is people aren't convinced. Very few people who aren't very well educated in a lot of these things are not actually convinced by the data. They're convinced by who is telling them the data. And I think that that's a difficult thing, is people still, we're still a social species. We still value trusting certain individuals more than trusting, a group of, trusting, what the scientific consensus is or what the actual data is. And I think that's something, we still have such an emotional tie to what we will consider true.
Absolutely. And when you go to a seminar or you go to a conference and somebody presents a paper, and you'll see people asking in the room occasionally some incredibly stupid questions, but at no point does the person presenting the paper go, that's not how it goes. They say, thank you very much for that lovely question. Here's bum, 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 bum. And I think nobody's saying accept anything on authority. People might find that a useful way to gain knowledge quickly, but with the scientific viewpoint, you can always say, ask me as many questions and they're useful for me. Whereas the other side perhaps is a bit more, that's just the way it is, so you better get praying.
Okay, Angry, you go next.
I'd just like to say that I see where you're going with the, it's not just about the empirical evidence, because as much you could have the most thought out, well documented, detailed evaluation of a notable phenomenon in nature, but it can fall flat because some prick can get up and just say, that's just a theory. Because for the simple reason that there are plenty of people who don't understand all of the terms, and I'll just stick with terms because there's another word floating around, but it's floated out of my head because I'm a little bit stupid today. But there are people who don't understand these things, and it is, in many cases, it's as important of the presentation as it is of the actual documentation, because I can get up on the rooftops in my local town, and I can probably, given a couple hours preparation time, convince most of the town that I can fly, that I'm Jesus, or that these other mad claims. Given enough time and the proper presentation, I can do a lot of fucking crazy shit and make people believe it, because the presentation is key. But it would, like I said, it would all fall down if someone was to say, well, if you say you can fly, jump and we'll see. Like, as much as the documentation is important, so is the presentation, but most of the time when dealing with the general masses, presentation seems to be more important.
If I may?
Go ahead, Donald.
Please call me Don.
Okay, Donnie.
Don or Donnie. Donald is just has got a stigma behind it, so.
Don't make him go quackers.
Hey. Hey, you cabbage eater, you shush.
Top of the fucking morning.
Hey, you take your Lucky Charms and sit down and be quiet for a minute. Anyways, my point is, Sam, you make a very good point. I mean, and all you guys have really good points. Well, coming from someone who went from 4 or 5 years ago being a complete staunch creationist to being understanding and no longer a creationist, it is absolutely the presentation. So I would completely agree with you on that. But on the same token, I think, at least from my perspective, and when I give you this, it's only coming from the way I see things, not as the church sees it. And I think everybody knows that by now, that I don't look at things the same way. But I also do see that it's not just, the argument I have is this, or not the argument I have, but the problem I have with it is, you hear all these people that are, arguing the fact that there's, that there's, say, point A, that evolution 110% is right. There's nothing wrong with it, and we should just believe everything that it says about evolution. But those people that are making that argument has never spent one day in a lab, has never spent one day in a experiment test, or they're just and pardon the expression, they're regurgitating the same thing they've heard. So in my opinion, that's still proselytizing. I mean, that's helping the case. I mean, Sam, you're a perfect example. You actually work in a lab. So if you presented something and dumbed it down for people like myself, and I'll be the first one to admit it, I'm an idiot when it comes to scientific jargon. But if you dumbed it down for those of us who don't understand the Lepithecus link in man's evolution, I have no clue what the hell that means. I saw a 5-minute video on YouTube that changed my life when it came to evolution. And it didn't say one word. All it did was take the skeleton from the first down to present. And it made sense. But it's when you argue the scientific jargon that makes us confused, and we want to put up that wall and say, hey, I don't want to listen to you anymore because we don't understand what you're saying. So it is absolutely the presentation. And I would have to agree with anybody who's making that claim that it is presentation, just like Jim Jones. He was the best, perfect example of presentation that made his followers follow him to Guyana and drink the freaking Kool-Aid. And when it comes to the term brainwashing, it has nothing to do with brainwashing. It just means that the person presenting it had a good manipulation of those people, and they followed him to Guyana. And so you can argue the fact back and forth that the science is empirical. Well, science constantly reviews itself, constantly changing its answer. We went from when I was 18 years old that the universe was 1.5 billion years old to what it is now, 4.7 billion years old.
Wait. Just to note, I don't think the universe from last time I've known, it was always 1.4.
No.
I mean,
when I was 18, that's over 20 years ago. When I was 18 years old, when I went to school, I'm talking about the public school system. I was taught this. That's why I know this. Okay, I'm not saying this, I'm just pulling a number out of the sky. This is what they told me in school. And I blame our system because of that.
Yeah,
I've educated myself.
Unfortunately, that's the school system you were in. Because we've known that the universe is around 14 billion years old for at least
you're saying 14 billion. I just said 4.7.
No, that the Earth is 4.5 billion. The universe is 13.8 billion to within 1% certainty. So we do know that within a certain degree of certainty. But it's an issue of education, absolutely, because just off of, no one has thought that the Earth alone has been known for years upon years now to be over a billion, 4.5 billion years old, even from the time that you would have been in high school. So it's the problem.
You just said 4.5 billion years old. The current number is 4.7 billion. That's my point. I mean, there's no...
It'd be hard to get within that close to the actual figure. I mean, the point is that the major theories that are discussed on YouTube are not vastly esoteric theories. There's a bit of quantum mechanics that gets bounded around when people are talking about free will. But these aren't highly esoteric, only for the initiated scientific theories. And they're invariably produced to answer, some of these apologists' videos who just ride roughshod over, the work of decades. Do you know what I mean? So they're not necessarily proselytizing. They're saying, sorry, you appeared to claim that weird things about the world and offer absolutely nothing. And they, for example, the classic one is, how did pure randomness assemble a human? And things like that. Probably. And then they dismiss it. And then it's totally a complete misunderstanding and a misrepresentation of the theory, which isn't hard to find. Everyone on YouTube has got access to the internet, and it's rather unforgivable that they haven't bothered to look. So I think part of it's more sort of, why don't you read?
And that's the reason why I went from being a complete staunch creationist to where I'm at now, because I did educate myself.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
To dismiss your education. And no, I didn't go to school to learn this. I learned it through other people, through other documents or documentaries, because I'm not a book reader. I can't, because of especially now, even more so. I've always had a learning disorder of being able to read a book and absorb it. I absorb audio and visual, not or
audiobooks are a great way to learn, actually.
Right. And
listen to the Feynman lectures. They're fantastic and very accessible.
But I want, if I'm going to watch a video, this is one thing that I've kind of filtered out, is that I would rather listen to someone who's educating and leaving their opinions aside and letting someone, oh, I don't have dyslexia, Bob. I would rather someone tell me the facts, explain, dumb it down, because I don't understand. I'll be the first one to admit I don't understand scientific jargon. But just like in school, the biggest argument here is creation should not be taught in school. Absolutely correct with that. I don't disagree with that. But in the same breath, those who have an opinion about what other people should or should not believe in the school, leave that outside in the hallway. Teach the kids from the books that you have, not giving your viewpoint, because that happened here in Reno. My middle son went to school, and his science teacher was an atheist. And he started spewing his views and his opinions about shit. And I went to that school, and I told him, look, I don't care that you have an opinion. That's your God-given right, or your that really pissed him off. But that really pissed him off. But it's a figure of speech at this point. You know, it's your right to have an opinion, but leave your fucking opinions outside the school. You're here to educate my kid, not to feed them your fucking crap. Okay? You can teach my kid what that information is. Let him decide. And that's why, and this is one of the other stigmas I hear, that all Christians indoctrinate their kids on a religious level. I don't mean the basic level where you teach your kids values. I'm talking about teaching my kids about God. Of course, my wife and I would love for all our children to be Christian, but they're not. I have 2 atheist children and 2 Christian children of their own choice, because I gave them both sides of the information and they made the choice.
I think this is wonderful. I mean, and this is what I would campaign for. Do you know what I mean? You're appealing to getting scientific knowledge, dispassionate access to facts.
Yeah.
You know, this is what success looks like for the atheist movement.
But I would say that I actually, this spring, I interviewed for a teaching job, and I did get the offer, but I will decide whether I take it. It's for the year after this. But one of the things is I was the only person, and I think this is very telling of the way teaching is, because it was a pretty prestigious organization that I was interviewing for, and what they had said was, I was at the final interview stage, very few people, very, very selective. And what had happened is I was the only person who gave a science-based lecture in the entire thing out of 10 people at the interview. And you had to give not a lecture, but a lesson, because there's a difference. But that to me is shocking. And it's because the people who are like me, who are science educated, either become researchers, college professors, or doctors. They don't ever, or they go into just straight into a different industry. They don't.
People with science degrees do other things but science.
They don't. They don't teach science. They either become scientists or doctors for the most part. So that's the issue, is you don't get people who are well educated enough that they can take a subject and frame it in an interesting way. And that is important. You do have to frame it in an interesting way.
I think that's absolutely correct. You look what they do in Scandinavia with teachers, how much they pay them. And they get the absolute best people, and it inspires a whole generation. If you've got a good teacher, as you say, you know, it's a phenomenal experience having a good teacher.
Oh, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with you, Darren. For the fact is that you've got, all right, one of my favorite teachers in high school was Mr. Brennan. He was a social science teacher. And this guy was he was laid back, but not too laid back to be taken advantage of, but was laid back enough to take the time to explain certain things. You know, I mean, where one of my most hated teacher, like Mr. Smith, we'll just call him Mr. Smith because I can't remember his name. This guy was more of the opinionated and said that, well, you're kids, you don't know shit, so you just need to listen to me, and that's it. You know, if you take a teacher that takes the time to explain things for those who can't understand it right out of the gate, you know, absolutely, I would completely agree with you. It is the right presentation from the teacher and the right respect that's given, and understand that not everybody can absorb the information the same way and explain it the right way.
Well, as someone who's still getting his ass dragged through the education system here, I agree with what you're saying. The good teacher can make or break a subject. One of my favorite teachers and one of my most despised teachers taught me the same subject. The one I hate was off on maternity leave, I believe, and we got a substitute. Substitute teacher was laid back, constantly asked us questions to spark debates and conversations so that we would actually absorb the knowledge. Brilliant. I loved getting into these conversations. We would talk. Now, this was a religious education teacher, so it was on religious topics, which was something I was interested in at the time. And we had conversations on abortion, euthanasia, adoption, gay marriage, fucking huge plethora.
Is this in Ulster?
Is this what?
Are you Northern Ireland?
Yeah.
Ah. Yeah, I imagine it's very good education system in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Certainly costs enough.
Yeah, you'd like to think so, but wait until you hear where this goes. Well, basically, we had this fantastic teacher, and she clearly enjoyed her job, and she liked passing on this enthusiasm to other people. And I was someone who, even at this time, fucking despised religion with almost every fiber of my being, because I'd seen nothing but bad things. Because I'd focused on the extremist views, so I wasn't exposed to all the good stuff as well. But still, I despised kind of her angle, or not her angle, her standing point, but the way she presented to it really engaged me. The teacher I hated was... Oh no, Darren's being attacked by a dog.
Being licked by them. I've got two, Perry and Darwin. Perry and Darwin, look. I've labelled my cats.
But the teacher... I just wanted to say that the teacher I hated was, I really hated her when she came back and took over the class, because suddenly all of those conversations stopped and we were just shotgunned with rhetoric of, the Catholic Church says you must hate this, so you're going to fucking hate it. And I mean, she would fucking crack her fist down on that table. You will hate this because Jeebus says so, was pretty much her angle. And it destroyed that subject for me.
I mean, growing up in Northern Ireland... Sorry.
If I may, I'd like to address Shane Gorey. This person has asked me a question, and I was waiting until there was a break or something. That person asked...
Donnie, can I just do an announcement?
Sure.
If you want to join the show, feel free to add Strife on Skype. or just look up the word Sir Strife, because that's the account name. But my name comes up as Strife because my profile's name's that. Thank you, that's all. Okay, go ahead.
Shane Gorey, you asked me what do I think should be the standard taught in schools. I think the information that is given to our education should be the truth, the information that we all use every single day. And if someone wants to advance themselves, don't leave these kids like what we see nowadays, where kids just don't give a damn about graduating high school because it's too hard for them. break it down for the kids who don't understand it as much as the other kids. You know, I mean, there's some kids like my son. He has 135 IQ. The boy quit school because he was bored of the education, because they didn't fit it to his intellectual level or his IQ level. So when it comes to the criterias, I just want my kids to graduate and have a good life. So if that means that they need to improve what they're teaching in the schools, then so be it. Because ultimately, in the end, our next generation is the way our life is, our world's going to be. And until someone realizes that and stops, here in Nevada, see, I can only speak of Nevada. I can't speak of other states in the union because I've only been a parent in the state of Nevada. And it is the worst, the most appalling education system in the country. It's 50th in the country. Okay, our graduation rate for high schoolers is 31%. Okay, and that's statewide. And on the area that I live, it's even lower. It's like 22%, because they don't acknowledge that the kids need all the information to work off of. I mean, my oldest boy, who I was saying is one of the atheists, he thinks he's an atheist solely because he's he believes in evolution. He doesn't understand what it means to be an atheist. So I hope I answered your question.
I'd like to make a point.
Go ahead.
I feel like opinions matter in teaching as well as representation. I think they should be represented as what they are, as conclusions drawn from facts. And I don't necessarily support the idea that no teacher should not disclose their conclusions that they draw from the facts. But I think they should represent them as conclusions that they personally draw.
Okay, then with that statement, so then you have no problem a Christian giving his opinion from the information that's given in the books.
In the book,
in the education books, the academic books that they use in the school, and the teacher who is a Christian gives his opinion of that information.
So are you saying like a teacher or a Christian teacher? Oh, sorry.
Let me answer the question. As long as he represents it as his opinion, no, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. All right.
I strongly disagree. And I've had a lot of, especially at the collegiate level, where you have professors that you can kind of glean what maybe their views are, but you actually don't know because they're being very professional and not presenting anything. It should just be clear that you're presenting the facts. And I think that you enter a dangerous territory of indoctrination when you associate something with your opinion. Because if I'm to, if I do take that teaching job and I become a teacher and I say that it's my opinion that this implies that, then people are, if I'm in a position of authority, they give that opinion more weight than just being an opinion.
Well, all right.
I mean, I absolutely agree with Sam and Dawn on that. Simply because, I mean, it's poisonous to allow opinions into things like science. Because, as I say, when they are discussing papers and things like that, people ask stupid questions. And if somebody stood up and said, I don't even have to bother answering that because it's a stupid question, you haven't answered, those type of opinions, people start...
Guys, something's wrong with XSplit. A problem has occurred. The show is going to get off the air for 5 seconds because it's going to close right when I click OK.
Why don't you just not click OK till the end of the show, sir?
Well, because it won't let me edit anymore, and I feel bad.
Just don't edit anymore, sir.
Fine. I'll leave the animations as they are.
So I wanted to address that point. I think it's a veritable part of education, because when you disclose it as an opinion, then you open it up for the opinions of the rest of the conclusions. I'm not saying that every class needs to be structured like this. I'm just saying I think it's valuable to understand that as long as you suggest it as an opinion, you could subjugate your own view to the interpretations of the class, and that means that their conclusions are not necessarily valid, and your conclusions are not necessarily valid, but it could lend weight to your own position, or it could make a child more curious about how a person derived that conclusion.
Well, I just don't like it because most people aren't as with all due respect to the American public, I would say that
here we go. What's coming next?
The 8 of us here are probably...
XSplit stopped. Sorry.
If anything, my XSplit's working too
well. But in that sense, I'm very, very fortunate. But the issue is what I realized was re-entering sort of the real world after being in a bubble for 4 years. Is that when I would interact with people who are in the real world, they're so fucking stupid. And the issue is not that everyone is stupid or that I think that I'm superior to anyone. It's just that
can you turn off your show, please?
To find smart people is so fucking difficult, unfortunately, because critical thinking is a rare skill.
But that's what I'm talking about promoting. This is what I'm talking about at promoting. It promotes critical thinking if you suggest an opinion and then you subjugate that opinion as an opinion. You say, but this is my conclusion and this does not make me right. It's my conclusion. That supports critical thinking because it doesn't say these are just the facts and do whatever you want with them. It says these are facts that people have opinions on that you can review for yourself. I think that supports critical thinking.
Well, I don't think that high school, I just don't think that high school students are at a level where they can handle dealing with an authority figure's opinion.
If I may, I would just like to say that I agree with Sam on, you should be able to interject your opinion with it. Echo. You should be allowed to interject your opinion as you present it as your opinion at a certain level. You can't do it with elementary school kids. I think that's the lowest level. Yeah, elementary school kids. Because then they're going to think, oh, teacher says this, teacher knows best, teacher's right. So clearly that must be the way it is.
Well, I don't sorry. I don't mean... In elementary school, I don't think you're espousing anything that people have opinions on. Like when they teach math and language arts, I don't really know what you'd be having. But it's an opinion to okay, this is an opinion, and I think it's a valuable opinion that you would teach in a class such as physical education to keep your body healthy. That's a valued opinion because it's not a rational conclusion to derive from just the facts of what keeps you healthy and what doesn't, whether or not you should be healthy. Those are opinions. Whether or not you should be healthy is an opinion.
I think that's the problem, is what you're labeling as opinion, where interpreting is polemic. Do you know what I mean? What you're not advocating is somebody saying, all right, here's evolution, here's the facts about evolution. Evolution is a theory that describes and explains the variation of life in the world. Yeah, you can't posit God at the end of it, therefore evolution contradicts God, but I think God's real, so therefore evolution must be wrong. Is the sort of dangerous opinion.
No.
If you know what I mean.
Can I welcome Polymath to the show?
Hello, Polymath.
Hello.
Hello.
Can I be heard?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say I took a philosophy class, and it was in the style such that it was not necessarily the teacher teaching us, we just have conversations, and one of the conversations was about, we talked about God, we talked about qualia, Rats would be interested in that, but we talked about all these things, and it's really, it's sort of an enlightening way of looking at, of teaching, because you learn from different people, rather than from one source, although you can kind of know where the teacher stands on certain things, because we talked about, for example, is anyone
Does anyone watch?
Mary's Room?
Hello.
Are you familiar with that?
With what?
Sorry, what?
Mary's Room. The argument for consciousness and how consciousness cannot be explained by material means.
Wait, is that the one? Is that the one with the person that knows everything about the color red?
Yes.
And is that the one? Is that the one? Pretty much, she didn't know like you say, she knew everything about the color red, but she never seen the color red.
Yes.
So she doesn't know everything about the color red because she never seen it.
Yeah, and therefore, like, there has to be some immaterial aspect to consciousness.
I thought it was redness.
Is this about qualia?
Qualia, yes.
I'm worrying that we're kind of getting off topic here. I mean, the idea.
Sam, sorry, but this is a guest question time.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that the issue is I think we're starting from a false premise that discussion classes are uncommon. Those are incredibly common at any university. And whether we should integrate more discussions at a high school level is always a question, and it ultimately comes down to the way that the teacher likes to talk. But
yeah,
you know, it's not something novel. I mean, even in science classes, there are discussion classes.
But I mean, certainly going through the British education system, you have to, the sheer volume of information you have to get into your head in order to progress to the next level can't be held back, or can't be allowed to be held back. When you're doing that sort of pre-university study, by having endless discussions about what we feel about the speed of light. You there's a time and place, and that time and place is sort of in higher education rather than in secondary education, simply because when kids are young, their heads are sponges, and we all admit it matters about presentation, and people are infinitely convinced about all sorts of silly things. So, you need to just go... I don't like the idea of training children to just pass exams. But there's a very large part of that, certainly in more junior education. And there's probably less room for, in expecting the children to understand what are clearly facts, and then try and separate that from the ill-informed waffle of a bad teacher, if you know what I mean.
What's the topic? Just out of curiosity.
I have no idea.
The topic was religion's influence on society.
And now it's just become a discussion on education.
Education, which is a wonderful subject, and we discussed.
And I may be in the British system in a year, so we don't know yet.
Where are you going? Where are you going, please?
I don't know yet, but I am thinking.
Bristol. I live in Bristol.
I'm thinking. This is very off topic, but I was at Cambridge for a program a year ago, and there was a professor there who was doing some really interesting research, who's since moved to UCL, and he wants me in the lab.
I went to UCL.
So, yeah, this is very off topic, but I may be in the British system in a year. I don't know yet.
Excellent. Well, you'll be very welcome.
Well, Sam, I'm afraid I'm going to have to hunt you down and fill you full of Guinness.
I like Guinness. It's cool. I've only had one...
You've only had the exported Guinness?
No. I've only had one Guinness since I went to... since I was in Dublin. Because I refuse to have Guinness in the United States now.
Exactly, because exported Guinness is filled with preservatives which distort the flavour.
Oh, it's horrible compared. What were we talking about?
We're talking about how religion's influence on society.
Oh yeah.
I have a question, and it's relevant. I'm just wondering, why do you think that fundies and evangelicals see colleges and public schools and education such as indoctrination? Because I read Ken Ham's webpage for fun, unfortunately, and it's just, it's just such stupidity when you just see how adults, it's so reversed. They see education as indoctrination, and they see college as dangerous.
Well, as a relatively recent college graduate, I would say that the real thing that they see as dangerous is the fact that the younger generation is always more liberal, more progressive, and it's that's always been the issue. That's never been something new. It's any sort of conservative movement, be that religion, but the reason they fear education is because they know that once people can think for themselves, they will not believe them.
Well, it would be in their perspective, it would be a morally perverse thing to do, would it not? Because if you start taking all these considerations, and they're all worldly considerations, I mean, they can't reasonably do that, because they would say, there's the verses that say God gave Satan the world and shit like that. So all these conclusions that you're deriving out of the world are not spiritual understanding. So in their opinion, it would be morally reprehensible to do so, wouldn't it?
I think, you look at a lot of these mega churches that fund these things, and they look far more like businesses.
Yes.
And they're a bit worried about their future income streams, because they are a diminishing flock. Progress moves forward with the height of people's bullshit threshold. Which, the more you teach people to question things, then the more we progress.
I should also qualify my comment with saying that Jerry Falwell's school, Liberty University, did a study about a decade ago that concluded that my university was the most atheistic university in the United States.
Which university is this, Jerry?
I'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Sarah Williams?
No.
Oh.
Sarah Lawrence? No. Sarah Lawrence is an all-girls school, I'm pretty sure.
And you didn't qualify for that?
I have this thing. It's between my legs, and it disqualifies me from other schools as well.
That's an interesting claim. Is it true?
Have you not seen, Sam, have you not seen Sorority Boys? Didn't you even try?
Oh, yeah, I seen that movie. Yeah.
Or even
just,
better, have you ever seen
your
the
legs?
80s movie called Private School?
Didn't you try to tuck it between your legs and stand for
Right.
it?
Yeah. So they go,
I'm not Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
You're not.
I'd fuck you so hard. That's what he says. It's in the film I'm reviewing. It's okay.
And have you ever seen the 80s movie called Private School?
No.
Have you seen School for Scoundrels?
Oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah, that's okay.
It puts the lotion on, or it gets the hose.
It puts the lotion on the skin.
Who wants to speak? I think Realistic Nihilist wants.
Yeah, go ahead, Realistic.
No, I don't want to speak. I'm going to leave right now.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.
Just note, there would be most likely a 30-minute after show, because I have to go to work in an hour then, and I know that sucks. But tomorrow I'll have we'll have a 5-hour after show.
Can I read a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is from Ken Ham's Facebook page. This is a...
Ham? Do it with an Australian accent.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear
Hello? Go on. Do it with an Australian accent.
And eat a banana.
Yeah.
I can't, but it says, my question is, if the Bible was errant, why would anyone want to believe it? The only reason to believe the Bible is because it's inerrant.
And I think part of my brain just leaked out of my ear.
Yes, don't repeat his words. They make us stupid. If the Bible is true...
I honestly think Ken Ham's the missing link that creationists look for.
I know.
He looks almost like he belongs to Planet of the Apes. He looks like one of those monkeys from Planet of the Apes. Seriously.
You idiots!
How do you even
let
know?
him talk?
How do you even know that the Bible isn't true? Were you there? Are you God? You're not even God. How do you even know?
The question is, are you God, Ken Ham? Are you God?
Are you God? Are
Were you there at the start of the universe, you bastard?
They were all 1,000 years old back in the day, back in Bible times, which just goes to show it must be true. Come to
How are both Ken Ham and Jim Jeffries both Australian? I don't understand it.
Who's
They're all Australian.
No, but Ray Comfort's
Ken
New
Ham
Zealand,
isn't he?
if I remember correctly.
Ken Ham is Australian.
And Ray Comfort's is New Zealand.
I didn't say Ray
I
Comfort.
know.
Ken Comfort.
Do you think Ken Ham is for real and honest? I don't
He
think
has a fucking $1 million museum. I think.
Yeah,
I think he believes it enough that he would build $1 million museum that's now becoming bankrupt. I think honestly he believes it enough.
Wait, isn't he the prick that's trying to build the life-sized ark?
Yeah, and they don't have enough money, and their museum's not bringing in enough money.
Oh, I would fund that just for...
Wait, did you know you could buy a plank for the ark? You could buy a plank. No, wait, no, you buy a nail, then you could buy a plank, and then you could buy a beam. And
I would love to do
$1,000.
Is it on Kickstarter?
I would love to do it for one simple reason. If he builds it as described in the Bible, people realize A, you can't get all the animals on it, and B, the thing wouldn't fucking float.
Well, that's why they're building it on land, man.
Why don't they tell them to test it out?
They've already built... Are you talking about the Ark?
Yes.
Yeah.
They already rebuilt the Ark.
Out of the wood the wood that they specified?
Yeah,
it was out of the splinters from Christ's cross.
it's actually. Give me a second, and I'll find. I
think I know what you're talking about, but I think if I remember correctly, it would not support animals though like that. It wouldn't.
No, I was talking about the one that was built on land.
Oh, well.
If it was in Texas.
If that is the thing, I will give money to a Kickstarter to have that airlifted and put in a lake somewhere, and not even like storms as would be in the Bible, and just watch it just as it does the full Titanic.
Look now.
Fucking, yeah. I'll never let go, Jack. You're a fucking secret.
Paint me like one of your French girls, God. Paint me like one of your French girls.
Paint me and fuck me, Jesus.
Yeah, I'd fuck me. Jesus would fuck me.
Would you?
I want to prank call Answers in Genesis one day.
You want to what?
Prank call them.
Or just why?
I imagine they get a lot of prank calls, to be honest.
Oh, I'd love just to call them up and say, have you actually found any of the answers yet?
Yeah.
Like, one really good question is, if man was created to be immortal, then why would they need to eat anything?
Right? If man was created immortal, why the fuck aren't we immortal?
You don't watch enough Twilight.
Because God wanted the Highlander.
Oh,
yeah, there can be only one.
Yeah, maybe that's why there were so many beheadings in Roman days.
Maybe the one was Jesus. That's why. There can only be one. Jesus. Like,
I would love to be a proficient enough artist to be able to draw a picture of Moses just on the ark with it's just full of heads and him holding a sword as lightning strikes.
Have you guys seen the
Moses?
chick tracks?
Noah?
Have you guys seen the
no, not Moses.
Wait, have you guys seen the chick tracks with that Logic Kick used on his recent video about
yes.
Like, with the T-Rexes and says like phew phew like yeah.
Look at this poor T-Rex that's just drowning. He looks like he's having a really bad time.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Moses.
Why did he drown them again?
We don't know.
Because they were very naughty.
Because he needed a piss.
Because the T-Rex could not masturbate with its little arms.
Honestly, I think
it was too good for its own good.
I think the main flaw or the main reason that God destroyed the earth with a flood wasn't because he was tired of all the sin. He just drank way too many beers, and he was down for a slash.
He invented beer.
I thought it was Noah.
Yeah,
well, no, but this is the thing. God really needed a slash. He says,
this is the new version.
Noah, motherfucker. Noah, can do me a favor? Just watch everything. Get everything together and keep an eye on it for me. And then he starts pissing everywhere. Noah builds his ark. Everything's grand. And the way they speak that the next one shall be with fire, God's building up with baked beans because he's going to light a fart.
I thought it was because of giants.
Is it?
Sorry? Giants? You're thinking of Philistine.
No, I'm talking about he drowned the earth because of giants or something.
What are we fucking talking
I'm curious,
about?
did the Momen die? I mean, with the flood, because they were underground.
What about those reptilian people? Because, apparently the Queen is one of them.
Oh, David Icke?
Yeah.
How do we go
David
into
Icke?
David?
He's insane.
At least he's vaguely associated with religion.
We
What's
got
that?
into David Icke because I made a ham-handed segue because I want to make fun of that retard.
I hate him.
You hate him, Daz? You hate him?
He is
I hate him.
crazy.
Oh. I don't hate anyone.
Not even Venom fan.
Who?
Neffy.
Honestly, I have no experience of so many people. Perhaps I just met the wrong people.
No, if you haven't met Naffy or
Shock of
Venom
God?
Fang, you've met the right people.
Shock of God, I want to punch him in the face.
There's
I'm-
nothing interesting to talk about regarding these people. There are only a few people that really have earned. Here's the thing: is if I really don't like you, I really hate you. I just don't think about you because you're not worth my time.
Oh.
Jason Bourne.
Okay.
Everyone knows.
Look
Jason
at you setting up your artillery on the moral high ground.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's just I don't want to expend the energy fucking hating someone. It's not worth.
Well, for me, and I would guess for many other people, it's not that we want to expend the energy hating them. It's just that we like to occasionally remind ourselves that these people are idiots and should be mocked constantly.
The pleasures of hating. He wrote that.
I just
Philosophers will know.
now that you say the pleasures of hating, I just have this idea of someone beating off over a Naffy video.
Oh god, dude.
Take a picture of the screen all spread and send it to him.
Oh god.
Just as
Magnificent.
Naffy
I think Donald's like, are we masochists?
No.
Oh god.
Treat others as you want to be treated. Masochists.
Yeah, and friends don't let friends talk about beating off and Neffy in the same sentence.
Yeah,
Is he,
well,
do you know what he looks like?
Nephilim 3. He looks like a rapist. What, I mean,
he
Well, I
looks
suppose
like
he's somebody. Everybody's got somebody out there, haven't they? So somebody. Will...
I would not trust a
I
2-year-old
would
child
say-
on that man.
okay. I just want to say
I would not trust.
things.
I would not trust on that
Why is
man.
there an echo?
Okay, I just.
Someone needs to mute their live stream.
It's Polymath.
Someone needs to mute their live stream.
Polymath.
Hello.
Okay, I think he did it.
There we go.
Yes. What I was going to say. Damn dog. Not that.
Team got a dog.
Naffy looks like the stereotypical pedophile.
Oh, listen to this.
He does look.
Earlier on, we were like, I think it's really wrong to generalise. Really super wrong to generalise, don't we? And then we're like,
Okay,
oh, he
can,
looks
we,
like
can,
he looks like-
we get back from bashing from
Yeah, I
fundamentalist
just don't have
bashing
any
to
interest in it. Yeah.
what would you say religion's influence on religion? Pink Unicorn, since you haven't said anything and you're back.
Good point.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I totally agree. But Pink Unicorn, you there?
Sorry, I muted. I hadn't talked for so long. I muted and I couldn't find the unmute.
Yeah. So did you hear my question though?
Something about influence? Exactly.
What would you say is what is religion's influence in society?
Oh, what's it? Noise.
I think it's correct. I'm loving this discourse. I'm writing this down. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, write down whatever that
It's like a drunk Neff in the room. It's like.
Okay, we need to stop talking
I know.
about
I'm sorry.
these
Sorry,
people.
but
They're a
okay,
waste
go
of
ahead,
time.
Pink Unicorn.
Religion's influence in society. I think it's hard to say whether the things that religion does, are they really religious, or are they just to try to create some kind of a power grab, like this Ten Commandments thing? It doesn't really have anything to do with religion, just so that you have power and that you can force other people to sort of be under your thumb. But there are bad things from religious.
Do you mean like that?
Well,
quote, what is it? Religion is regarded by the stupid as true, the wise as false, and the powerful as useful.
Yeah,
that sounds very clever. Who wrote that?
It's Napoleon, isn't it?
I think so. Every time I say that, I mangle that quote. So
What is the
It's
quote?
Seneca. I'm pretty sure.
I think it is Napoleon. Yeah.
It's Seneca.
Is it?
Yes, it is,
Seneca
yeah.
the Younger.
Nero's
I think-
tutor.
No, I was mixing it
I
up with a
think it's-
Napoleon quote, which is, religion is excellent stuff for keeping common people quiet. Religion is what keeps the poor from murdering the rich.
Also, the quote, religion is the opium of the masses, by
Marx.
Karl Marx.
That's Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I got that
I
name
think
right.
it's,
I'm
it's,
smart
it's very
somehow.
hard
Wait,
to
my
say
question-
how much
my
of it is
question
actually
is
religion.
opium good or bad? In that
Opium tends to
Depends.
fuck you up.
well,
it's-
didn't Dazzletag, didn't your people once give the Chinese it? Opium?
My people.
Yeah.
We fought a war over it with the Chinese, the
I
opium wars. But I mean, no, I mean opium and its derivatives in terms of painkilling are fantastically useful, especially
Yeah.
towards the end of life. You know, like all these things, the abuse of them is terrible. But yeah, in America, you used to be able to buy it on the street in chemists, laudanum.
In
There's a
America,
cough
you
medicine,
used to be able
yeah.
to get cocaine.
Yeah, in drinks. It used to be in Coke, didn't it?
Oh yeah, it did.
This is because we have our freedom.
Yeah,
America! America!
Freedom.
America! Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Time to get this
Yeah,
top.
I love pink-eyed unicorns on there. Yeah, fuck no.
It's just the most apathetic.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, we're really going into circles. Okay, Dazzletag.
Ask a question.
What's your thoughts on religious? Wait, okay, let's do this. What is your thoughts on Britain's history of being a theocracy?
Britain's history of being a theocracy. Britain, or England, Britain only came into existence in 1701 with the Act of Union under Queen Anne. England's history is
Okay,
a history
fine.
of a
England.
people
England.
is a people worshipping themselves. You look at our national church, Westminster Abbey, it isn't filled with saints. It's filled with writers, artists, kings, and queens. And
I got to stand
England
over
is-
Newton's grave, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and it is, you know, it is a testament to people using, you know, the slightest veneer of religion in order to conduct a bit of ancestry worship. I think Britain's been successful in combining the church with the state. The Queen is the head of the church as well as the head of the government, and Parliament is sovereign. So the Church of England answers to Parliament. So they can be, and their doctrine has been changed by democratic vote in the past, and they can be kept far more in line than this. The idea of a wall between church and state. So in America, what you've got is this, this constant battle about, oh, well, I'm allowed to say exactly what I want, blah, 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 and I have absolutely no responsibility about its impact and its effects. Whereas here, everybody takes a second, especially the Church of England, takes a step back from things to at least try to sound helpfully part of the process, because they are part of the government.
That's one thing I find hilarious about
hilarious.
people in America. It's like, I have freedom of speech. I can say whatever the fuck I want. And then when you reply to them, you're just impeaching on my freedom of speech. No, you say something stupid, we insult you.
Yeah.
Part of freedom of speech.
I think it's very shocking for a lot of people to see how British people talk to each other and our powerful, great and good talk to each other.
Yeah, it is.
Because there's absolutely no respect whatsoever.
Have you ever tried to explain to an American the term "taking the piss" out of someone? They cannot understand
One
it.
sec, Dazzle, is it true that the church still has seats in the Parliament?
Yeah, in the House of Lords, there's 26 bishops that qualify to sit in the House of Lords.
And how many seats are there in total?
But they're not. They're known as the Lords Spiritual. Okay, so you have the Lords Temporal, the Law Lords, and the Lords Spiritual. And the Lords Temporal are the ones that review the legislation. So they're appointed lords. I think there's only about 90 hereditary peers now. Most aren't allowed to vote on any issues.
Also,
but they're primarily
if I remember my history correctly, the House of Lords can do little when it comes to laws beyond delaying one for a set period of time. They can't strike down a law anymore.
Yeah, they can only delay for 2 years laws that aren't the Finance Act. So they have no say in the Finance Act, which is the budget every year. So if there's no financial implications, so things like gay marriage, they'll get a reading. But their job is primarily, even though because we don't have a written constitution, it's all by convention. So primarily their job is to review legislation to say this is good, this is bad, because in effect they're supposed to have been appointed because they're good people and they know what's right for the, what makes a good law and what makes a bad law. They're, I suppose, employed as experts in those things. They do, however, have a historical role in that it was the upper house and was the, the step before the crown. So they do still vote on things. And they do pass down, return legislation to the House of Commons where it's particularly bad. And they did it in, I think, probably 6 months ago with the Health Reform Act. The House of Commons, which is the elected chamber, supposedly representing the people, said we want this legislation, sort it out, and then we'll send it off to the Queen for royal assent. And they said no, we're not going to let it pass. Now, it's a testament to the British system that there wasn't a constitutional crisis because of it. But it was the unelected House of Lords saying no, this law is not going to become law. And it had to go back. And of course, people happened to agree with it. But there was a tremendous worry recently with the gay marriage that it was going to get sent back. And that would have been far more worrying because it's a social bill rather than a departmental.
And this is why Britain is better than America.
It's one of the reasons why Britain's
yeah. Hey, I have lived in both. They're just different.
It's, they're
as the resident person who's lived in both.
Yeah. I
the bastard child of a brother and sister is different.
I think the American experiment. It's done. The American experiment. It's done now. Stop being silly. Come on back into the fold. But I mean, it's interesting. Certainly with with the Constitution, about its actual place in the American legal system. Because it is like a meta law that sometimes is completely ignored and sometimes it's observed by convention even though it's written down, but you have these things
it's very interesting that you have this institutionalized church, but at the same time I noticed that when I lived there that Britain's culture is far more secular than American culture, by quite a bit, so that when I would talk with people who, because I tried to hang out with people who actually were locals and not just other Americans, they just didn't understand the concept of, why we were making an issue out of gay marriage or why, creationism of all things is an issue in the United States. It's really interesting.
In all honesty, if creationism was tried to be paddled on the same scale here, it would just be laughed out of the public square.
Exactly.
Because people here tend to point out when something's retarded. And creationism is pretty much the biggest bag o' retard you have ever seen.
Yeah. And you can have here, people on comedy shows just really ripping into politicians. And it's seen as extremely poor form for them to sue. So you never get these politicians who are, subject to the most horrific abuse, suing to say, you can't say that about me, you can't say that about me, which is a really healthy democracy. But I think because the church is part of the state, it's answerable to Parliament, it's answerable to the people. Whereas in America it's answerable.
In America, it's just kind of tax exempt, sits there and spouts its shit with no repercussions. Over here, if the Archbishop of Canterbury talks shit, people talk shit back, and he must listen. That is the way. I mean, he can't get away with that stuff.
You see, proper academic theologians like Rowan Williams.
Giant Causeways Creationist Museum.
Yeah, but that's
this in
kind of
Ireland?
like...
That's
Yeah, that's there as kind of like a look at the creepy bastards. Point and laugh, children.
That's what we used to be.
I'll be right back. I gotta let
why
my
is
dog
that
out.
man so retarded?
Don't stare, Jimmy. You'll catch something. So
Don't stare. He'll release the
Don't
kraken.
stare. You'll catch it.
I'm curious. Why? I mean, why doesn't a creationist desecrate Darwin's grave? I always wondered that. Like, I mean, if they hate the guy that
That would be utterly disgusting.
Why
If a
would they, or why
creationist- I
haven't
mean,
they?
Yeah, why haven't they? I mean, has anyone done that?
I'd
there's
say there
limits,
may
isn't
have been attempts, but I think if they were to try it, they would be dragged through the courts, and if they were to avoid prison, they'd probably
dragged
be
through the
beaten to death with purple dildos.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah,
honestly, I don't even know what would the point of it be. They certainly work hard enough at desecrating his reputation. Just 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a creationist who, when I mentioned something about how people who don't believe in creationism raise their kids and whatnot, and he says, "Oh, you're raising your kids to be racist." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, Darwin was a racist." And he goes, and he trots out, "Well, what's the full title of Origin of Species?" And oh, geez, here we go. And so you have a man who was an abolitionist at a time when it was unusual to be opposed to slavery, and they will say anything
His mentor was
to make him out to be a black.
His mentor was black.
Yeah, they'll say anything to make him out to be, a God-hating racist, child abuser, or whatever. They'll say anything about him.
He was fairly
What was it
God-hating
that Kanthoven? What was it Kanthoven put in? It was when the anniversary was coming out, and they gave out free copies of the Origin of Species with like.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, Ray Comfort.
They
Sorry.
had the Origin of the Species they were giving out, and they left out.
It had
chapters.
that. No, it had as far as I'm aware, it was the exact same, but they had this introduction, which, according to them, showed irrefutable proof that Darwin had a close connection with Hitler. Clearly, these guys are fucking mental. How are they not locked in padded cells? Explain that shit.
Because lots of people agree with them.
If I may.
Well, fucking build more padded
Hey,
cells.
Donnie, whatever.
If I may, I'd like to address what Angry just said about, because I was out of the room, but what were you saying when it came to Darwin, and who was saying that that he was insane? Or that he was connected to Hitler?
Ray Comfort, Mr. Banana Man.
Oh, okay. Okay. It is a known fact that Hitler admired the American Eugenics Society in the 1920s. And when he started his stupid shit in World War II, he took from the books of the Eugenics Society, which is now Planned Parenthood in the United States. If you look at the history that I think I was talking to Hogtie the other day about this. The thing is that I don't hold any more weight or any more disregard as well to Darwin anymore. But I used to make the feeling that everybody wants to have everybody get on the same band page with Darwin when if I'm not mistaken, it was Wedgwood, Galton, Huxley, and Darwin that were all cousins. And somebody was telling
Huxley
me about
and Darwin weren't related.
Actually, they were.
The
They were
Huxleys
second
were not
cousins.
related to the Darwin.
They were second
Related
cousins
to everyone.
But it's
Okay.
regardless. But
Yep.
the three major ones that were related, to save argument, they married their second cousins so that they could keep. I guess the back in those days you had to marry a family member to keep the property together, or in the same family or some shit like that. And they had concubines to extend the family.
He wasn't a member of the aristocracy. It was absolutely.
If I could just point or ask a quick question, or not even ask, just point something out. if you are trying to make the argument of, I I assume you're not trying to make this argument, but I guess that someone could perceive it this way, that, Darwin did bad shit. Things tend to change over years. Just because the guy that came up with something was believed in something doesn't mean, or like, fuck, how to use an example? If
Newton believed in
if
alchemy.
well, yeah, if someone believed in evil shit, and I'm not saying alchemy is evil shit, although it is kind of backstabbing, two-timing bullshit, but if someone believes in evil shit and they happen to have a brilliant theory, fuck them. Their theory is what counts. Like, what was it? Republicans in America keep going on about how Abe Lincoln was Republican. Yeah, and now they're trying, like, Abe Lincoln fought for the freedom of the slaves, and now the current crop of Republicans kind of want to reverse that just a tad.
Ironically, Republicans back in Abraham Lincoln's time were more like liberals back then.
Yeah, it was the
like
Democrats
I
that were
they flipped after the whole boost thing in the early 20th century. That whole thing, the party system flipped.
No, they flipped as a result of the New Deal. That's when the alliances changed, and then they solidified in the late 1960s and 1968 as a result of Nixon's Southern strategy. Because the Democrats used to be the party of the South. They used to be the racist party.
Oh, yes. Then they were flipped. Then the
ding 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 ding.
Do you mind if I maybe not let this slip by? Was there a suggestion a moment ago that the modern eugenics movement is now repackaged as Planned Parenthood?
Yes. Yes, it was
I
1952. The name was changed in 1952.
Well, we have like
so, what are we saying here? What are we saying, that using contraception is eugenics, or is it just they use the same business address?
In the United States during the 1920s and up until the latest event of it happening was in 1986, people were sterilized because they gave birth to disabled children. In
really?
California, in California alone, there were more sterilizations of families in the early 40s, right during the World War II, to stop from the reproduction of disabled children.
I know a more recent example of sterilization.
I know that area of the history.
I'll get you a link for that so you guys can see it yourself.
There's a more recent example of sterilization on that scale. It was uncovered that, what was it? In large parts of, and I can't remember any of the fucking details. Why can I not? It was found that some company was putting sterilizing agents in the water of areas which had predominantly Latino populations, in order to kind of breed them out, I suppose.
But we're not getting any sources on this, and
also,
it just.
I'm gonna get you the sources.
Wait.
Hold on.
Also, we could talk more about this in the after show, but I think we should have final statements. And also, welcome, Steve. Took you long enough to get on. Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to go first since you were the last one, and you have no idea what's been going on for the last 2 hours.
Nope.
Why'd you bring him in then?
I didn't bring him in. He was in the call from the beginning.
He wandered in.
Okay, what about Polymath? You go first. Polymath?
Hello?
Yeah, final statements, because we got like 8 minutes left, so let's do final statements.
I don't know. Education is poison to religion, as most creationists probably know and fear. So, to all the people in the closet, just, get more information, learn the arguments, as Cult of Dusty said, we own the internet, so let's fight the good fight.
Okay, Dazzletag?
Well, I think one thing that's come from everyone's view is that presentation matters, which suggests that people are more like sponges and you get them to believe anything. which I think makes it all the more essential that people learn how to defend themselves from, unscrupulous people wanting to convince us and our children of nonsense. So, critical thinking and developing a good bullshit detector and getting people to question everything is ever, all the more important, I think, now in the information age. So, thank you.
Pink Unicorn. Pink Unicorn.
Sorry, I'm on muting.
God damn it.
Yeah, I just was looking at Margaret Sanger because someone mentioned her. She was, like a lot of people at the time, she was in favor of eugenics. She disagreed, she strongly criticized the Nazis. She didn't think any person should be sent to a gas chamber or anything like that. She thought that was taking it too far. She only wanted to try to improve the the people that have bad kind of genetics, that they're not reading so much. But I don't see that she ever was in favor of lethal. It says here they should not be sent to a lethal chamber for the defective progeny. So.
Hogtie?
Just hang on one second.
Okay, Donald, you want to go then?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Or go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that. I got a little interruption here. I had a final word. Let me sort of cram one in before that. I do really object to this notion that there's sort of a straight line amongst Darwinism, like the whole theory of evolution, eugenics, the Nazi Holocaust, and Planned Parenthood. I've heard this before, that creationists kind of like to thread all those beads on the one chain, and they're very much unrelated notions. I mean, obviously there's connections, but to sort of suggest that as the creationists like to do, to suggest that there's somehow a straight path from Darwinism to eugenics, and that eugenics is pretty much hand in hand with the way the Nazis were engaged in the Holocaust, you're leaping over huge chasms there. And certainly people can point out some things that are common amongst them. I mean, we could have a whole hour discussion about how ridiculous that notion is. I guess I'll say briefly that eugenics and the Nazi Holocaust are radically different in that. I mean, eugenics was actually a fairly long-lasting movement through the 20th century, but it was well-intentioned. The person can look back on it with the benefit of some hindsight in our current moral zeitgeist and say, well, we really shouldn't be sterilizing people against their will and whatnot. But you need to recognize what I think is a very obvious distinction, right? I mean, that they were saying that we're trying to reduce birth defects, and they saw it as a reasonable way to do it, as opposed to, we're just going to get rid of all the Jews, or we're going to get rid of all the gays, and sort of label a whole group of people. Now, I'm not saying that I would come down and support one or the other, but I'm
we
saying
need more gays.
To say that they're the same thing is to really do a great disservice to a lot of very well-intentioned people. And then, of course, to connect it to Darwinism is just yet another attempt to say, well, he was a bad guy, his ideas lead to bad things and whatnot. I don't think I can really flesh this out right now because we're in final words here. Let me jump real quick back to what I think is an interesting thing that we didn't really get to, and maybe you guys can kick it around in the after show. I think what we agreed on repeatedly was that these religious structures might do some good. There's some hungry people that get fed and whatnot. But for the most part, the religious structure is really a mechanism for abuse of a people. And I think, a lot of head nodding will agree with that. And you know what? The Christians will agree with that too. I think it would be an interesting intellectual challenge for everybody to, let's grant the evangelical Christians, concede to them this one point. And that is, as they like to say, Christianity isn't a religion. It's about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And, I always roll my eyes when they say that, because they usually say it as a way of kind of avoiding the actual topic under discussion. We'll usually be talking with them about a supernatural belief, and you'll use the word religion as a stand-in for supernatural belief, and then they'll be, it's not a religion. But in this context, I'm willing to say, okay, I get your point, that, when we would talk about what good religion does or what damage it does, we would talk about the religious institutions and the religious structures. Those are the things that evangelical Christians are opposed to, and yet somehow they gather in mega churches. But but it's interesting. I would kind of challenge people then to look at, as much as we can say, well, the Catholic Church has done some bad things and covered them up, and come up with all these examples of churches that have, was it the 700 Club? I think it was that was raising money to send to Africa, and they would show images of these starving African kids. But they were sending money to Africa, but it was to buy more helicopters for the church-owned diamond mines that were operated by slaves. It's insane. Oh, we're sending money to Africa. So we can point to that and say it's a bad thing. But what about in the case, and I only raise this as a question, I'm not even going to try to answer it right now, but I think it's an interesting intellectual challenge for us, is that what about in the life of an individual? What do you do when you talk to somebody who said, oh, I used to be hooked on drugs and I was depressed all the time, et cetera, and then I let Jesus into my heart and my life has turned around? Would you say, how do you, on balance, weigh the pros and cons of spiritual thinking and that sort of religious influence on the masses? When you look at it on the individual level, do you think it's good that we have people out there giving out religious tracts and encouraging people to accept Christ into their hearts and whatnot? So again, I just sort of raise that as a question. I don't intend to answer it right now, but I just think it's interesting to try to meet the challenge that the evangelical Christians would offer in agreeing with you that religious institutions are bad, but then they would turn around and say, yeah, but belief in Jesus Christ is a good thing.
Donald, you got 30 seconds.
All right, I'll try to make it fast. My point is that everybody makes very, very valid points, but I'm going to expand on what Hogtie said. There are those people that look at Christianity as, like the downfall of society. And at its basic core, for those of us who do, look at as it, for those like myself, I lost my father on the 10th of January. I took solace that he would be in heaven when I die. Now, for those of you who don't believe in heaven, that's your choice, and that is that me believing that there's a heaven and a hell, it does not affect you guys. Okay, so when someone loses a loved one and they find calm and find peace at a moment of sheer depression, Christianity does affect people in a positive way in that manner. And for those to say, well, he's just worm food. Well, you know what? I mean, if someone wants to believe in God and say that, well, he's in a better place, to make them feel better, there's nobody on the face of the earth should say anything against that while they're in that darkest hour of their life. So, in my opinion, there are positives and negatives when it comes to religion, and how we walk our lives. It really does help someone. I know it did me when my dad died. So I think there's more to it than just that I can say in 30 seconds. So
okay,
I think there's more to it.
Yep.
Angry Pumpkin?
I'd just like to make a quick counter of what Donnie said. People finding solace in their darkest hour. People find plenty of solace in heroin and crack as well. But basically my closing statement is twofold. One, my motto, which is religion because fuck logic. And the other is, well, a friend has asked me to say this, which is, religion's bad, okay, very bad.
Okay.
And some.
In the words of Jay-Z, if you're having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one.
So sexist, and that's sexist. That's
That's so sexist, you...
I've never seen anything so sexist.
You chauvinistic pig.
Well,
Feel
this
like
is
a
the Line
pig.
Go Show, episode 4. Tune in next week and be back in 10 to 15 minutes for the after show. See you then.